before I get Sid on stage, I'll give a little bit of an intro. If you already don't know about Sid, Sid is the CEO, co-founder of PlaySimple, and he started out building casual gaming from India for the world. People would be laughed out of the room if you were doing it. There were very few examples before him. There was probably Nazara, but he was one of those risk-taking OGs who stepped out and said, India will build a casual gaming studio that will be the best in the world. So I'm really delighted to have worked with Sid for about 5 years, and equally delighted to have him today here to share his story with you all. Sid, welcome.
Thank you, Mayank. Thank you. I think, like always, you're very, very generous with your words. I think some of you guys, I think many of you guys have met a lot of friends here from past companies. So nice to meet all of you again.
Yeah, we were just saying this is probably a Zynga alum meet happening here. Bunch of Zynga guys. Hey, cool. Sid, I think maybe we talk a little bit about your early days. And I think when we had met, you had a very clear focus, a clear vision on the category that you want to build in. Your first deck had word gaming already identified. I think for a lot of studio plays that come out of India, that's probably one big question on their mind. What to start with? What category to go after? So maybe you could talk about how did you go about identifying that category? Why did you pick this versus the others? What were the characteristics for picking the category that you did?
Yeah, I think, sure. I think while in hindsight, everything looks 2020, it was not always the case. When we started off, we were looking at multiple genres, and we will go after these games, and we called it CATPAW, casual, arcade, trivia, puzzle, and in the end word, and of course we built a word game. I would credit, I think, initially a lot of it to my I think second employee as well as second team member Chandan, who was a lead designer, who is a design director at PlaySimple now. He's a great knack of finding opportunities which allowed us to essentially find the games that we ended up building, which ended up scaling. I think so understanding and once we figured out those games, then I think a lot of the left and right, both sides of the brain started working, where we started figuring, okay, these are the components that we need to take from existing product. These are the things that we need to improve that are missing, and these are the things that we need to innovate. Yeah, but I would credit Chandan for that. So you guys need to have a Chandan on your teams. but I think that in combination with like, hey, what are the games we realistically can build? It is good to think about a game, but we also, at least for us, a lot of it was also like getting back to like, hey, this is a great game, but can we build? And if we can build, will we be able to scale it? So a lot of those first principle thoughts that really helped us build our game.
So how should a studio think today? Because what is obvious is hyper competitive. It has all the big guys building. What is not obvious does not have competition, but I don't know whether it will work or not, whether the users will like it or not. So what are the characteristics of genres that one should look for, that yeah, this has the potential? Like any data, anything that you would...
Yeah, I think so I can speak from my perspective and example, and I can share what I see at now, of course, like after joining MTG and seeing the other companies and the exposure that we've gotten there, and also what some of us had the experience of working at Zynga. What I realized more and more, and since MTG is a group of companies that they've acquired, they acquired Hutch, they acquired Ninja Kiwi, it's a car racing company, the other is a tower defense company. What's surprising is that for each of these companies, it's something different that has worked for them. So each of these companies have a very different superpower. So I would say that hey, it's I can say that hey, data and analytics is something that is extremely important. Now, user acquisition muscle or ad monetization stack or product jobs, each of them individually are important. But if you look at some of the companies, for example, Ninja Kiwi is a company in the portfolio. They have built the business completely on organics. They do not do a single They do not spend a single dollar on user acquisition. Hutch is a company that has built car racing games in an industry which is super competitive. But it's again a startup, right? That has built the games from scratch. So I would say what is very important for a team is to understand where their strengths lie, and basis their strengths and the opportunity that they're seeing is to assess whether they will be able to build a game in that category. Because if that is, if that answer is yes, then a lot of things will be figured out. I think now, of course, the hygiene around competitive benchmarking, around data, around just playing your game, just being passionate about the product that you're building. Those are just hygiene now, I think. But like understanding superpower and then going after it is very important. And of course, like having partners like Elevation.
Okay. Good plugin. Thank you. Cool. I know you've built a empire in word gaming, and there are many more genres or categories that you want to go after. Are there certain tips that you can give to people how to go about testing whether they have picked the right genre or not? Because sometimes you may spend like 2 years believing the genre is right, but maybe it's not. And I think one of the important things in gaming is to know when you've not picked the right thing, kill it, move on to something else. How should one go about deciding some of those things?
It's extremely difficult now versus how it was before, because it's super competitive, developers across the board. I can speak from the perspective of the world landscape, because that's the space that we built. We had a strong belief and perspective that hey, that Indian market is relatively small, and I'm very surprised to see the numbers here. But 9-10 years ago, like you said, that hey, there were very few believers in the fact that hey, we'll be able to build a global business. But our perspective was that hey, if something is successful in the world, we found enough data points to see that hey, it is also successful in India. Now, but today when we see that, and we have multiple companies across the world which have kind of identified that trend, and they're all sort of going after and building for markets that where the revenue per user is really, really high. So while US, UK, some of the other markets which are high opt out remain exciting, but at the same time, I think your third thesis or your second thesis, I'm not sure, but I think building for India and testing out and validating in India is very important. If you build the game, test it with having real players play the game, getting data from there and understanding that hey, if you had a thesis on something, if you had a point of view, okay, hey, these many people will come back to the game, is that getting validated? If that is getting validated, then and if you are able to model out that hey, it'll break even, then you should go and scale the game. Should not be, yeah. I think there is that hitch that is there, which we had, of course, and you and Chirate team, Karthik was very supportive there. Was that hey, once we validated the metrics, we were very supportive. Okay, now press the pedal and scale the business. But before that, testing and validating the metrics is very important.
Yeah, I remember that board meet. I am convinced on the metrics now, and I'm going to spend half of our capital in the next month. next 1 month we'll spend half of the capital in the bank. And that was probably one of the most nerve-shattering board meetings I walked out of. And I said, okay, this guy has been doing it for 2 years in PlaySimple and so many years. He must be talking sense. Let's go do it.
But I think important to also share that here for the period where we were like, okay, now we cannot spend. Cannot spend.
Those were also very tough conversations where we were like, why are we not? Hold on, give me time. I need to figure this out. Very cool. Very cool. You also touched upon the world is different now. Obviously, IDFA is like a big bummer for everyone. How do you see the market for global casual gaming today in this environment versus when you started? Is it tougher to bootstrap and test now, or are there still some strategies available for people to go about testing it? And secondly, I think just from a capital point of view, it's just an expensive business to start off today compared to 5 years back?
Yeah, so I think very relevant question, and I don't know whether I have all the pieces of the answer because I think my data is 9 years, 7 years older, and but I have some data points in between. And every person's journey is different, so I would let you guys figure out the answers to that yourself. But some facts. So we are an ad business. A large chunk of our revenue comes in ads. We also do a lot of user acquisition. There is Nishant who's sitting there from Facebook, and he would probably also be a good data point to check on. But every year there is an inflation on the user acquisition cost, where somewhere in the range of 10 to 20%. You're all smart folks here. You can calculate compounding that over the course of 9 years. What is the value of that 2 million that we spent a few years ago? So you need that capital. Number one. There is also the cost of having teams. There is just like more competition for talent. There is more taxes that have come up in recent times, which would all add up in terms of cost of building a business. There is, I mean, if we ourselves were to go back and build a business that we built, we would require far more capital. So I would say for most of you guys, prioritize capital raising, raise as much more as you can. As simple as that. I think there are some of the other things that are not India specific, but they are global. I think just there's increased competition. Well, one can say, okay, say you've already accounted for that in the inflation in the cost per install. But then there is IDFA, which is sort of taking away the targeting capabilities. There are reduced organic percentage of installs that are there. Yeah, so it's just more competitive, and it's just like stuff is getting more and more complex. So you need a high talent density. You need more capital, and need more grit and passion.
Just on talent, maybe. What was your philosophy? I know the answer, but for the audience, what was your philosophy on building the org, on hiring talent? Because I think that's a challenge that most early stage founders face. You've raised a seed round, getting high quality devs, high quality game design guys is not cheap. It's expensive. You had also not raised a large amount of capital. How did you go about building your org? What was your sort of philosophy? This is how I will build this company. These are the people I want. Maybe some nuggets from there will be helpful for you.
So I think, first of all, I was very fortunate to work at a great company prior to starting at Zynga. So I had a great experience, had great colleagues who were there to speak to, understand from, had great co-founders. So we were good team that most of us were generalists, were ready to do most of the things. And we spent a lot of time thinking about what kind of company we want to build. So I think having that conversation early on that hey, it's going to be a very open culture, very transparent culture, and we our initial days were out of our apartment, then above a cycle shop, then above a car showroom, and most of the, I think at least the 2 places we lifted and put the furniture ourselves, and the team who joined us helped us there. So I think some of those things came in handy because most of the people are still around. I think the other folks who we felt deeply about were folks who were very passionate about gaming, who were very, very positive in general. Are the really good folks to have around. I think, and as I've spoken to some of the other folks, I think some people prioritize speed, some people prioritize trust, some folks prioritize just like, hey, the ability to bounce back. I think we just try to see if, as we speak to people, we are getting a positive vibe or not.
Got it. I think the other dimension that I recall very clearly is that in PlaySimple, all the leaders were sort of homegrown. People joined very early, or people joined at early tenure in the company, but were groomed and homegrown. There is always that temptation that let me get this very good, well paid from a top company, get him laterally. How did you resist that temptation and said, no, let me train these folks and build them up?
I mean, there are 2 sides of the question. One is that so basically we didn't raise enough capital. So I think we didn't have enough capital to pay in the first place to most of the folks. The folks, so that took care of one of the things, that we were not able to afford the people who were senior. The second thing was some of the people who we were able to bring on board who were senior, I think they were very, very comfortable taking a ride along with taking a comp cut and probably taking a high equity in the business, and were happy to sort of work with us in terms of grooming the talent ground up. So I was fortunate on that one, both on my co-founders and the senior folks who joined, which really helped in terms of keeping the talent longer, because we spend enough time with them, build great relationships, and I think they're all good friends now.
Very cool. If you again go back to early days, because that's advice for early stage founders here, what were some of the things that you now look back, you feel you did right? And if you were to do this again, you would do all of them all over, like talent hire here, anything else that you felt, these were the big sort of swinging decisions we took early that worked out well?
Start the company with Suraj, Preeti and Siddharth.
Those are, the second one probably people won't have the choice of.
Have the same mentors as we have today. And I think, and of course, like now it's sort of just becomes even more important, more relevant that, hey, that good people in your business are probably worth 10x more, right? Invest more and do not compromise on that. Like, hey, if you find somebody good, Then, and I've done that quite a lot. Sometimes I have sort of like regretted about it also by wasting too much time on that. But then, hey, I've tried like retaining some of the people that I really believed in with all my might. That hey, if I can retain them, and I would like to, and those are people I would like to start again with at any point, because those were really gems, and you see them really in difficult times. So I think that of course I would focus a lot more on taking decisions faster. As one thing, I would focus on like my initial team to be like I think probably a lot more senior, um, and then hiring, then probably decreasing the bar, raising a lot more capital than 4 million.
Yes.
I think, yeah, I think, see, I think some of the pieces of the puzzle I also don't know. I think the other three co-founders also hold some of the answers to this question.
Sure.
So I think collectively we'll be able to figure out.
That we internally at Elevation always give example of PlaySimple is you guys were one of the most data-driven early-stage companies that we've had in our portfolio. You guys were like so relentless on using your analytics to arrive at answer and not Sid's gut feeling or Preeti's gut feeling. What drove you to that? Is that the Zynga training? Is that something that you saw while you were building PlaySimple? Being that maniacally data-driven, and did that help?
To a large extent, I would attribute that. I would attribute a great amount of success to our instincts, our approach, as well as to the infrastructure in the team that built that infrastructure that allowed us. Some bit of that too, I mean, of course, like, and I said that, hey, good chunk of it we saw at Zynga, and that's what made us think like that. The second part was that, hey, in the initial part of the journey, when we were out to raise capital, people didn't believe our story, and we were like, okay, hey, folks will not believe. What is the other alternative we have? We were ready to go bootstrap, and in that state, how do you back yourself up? Yeah, I think so. So rationale is very difficult to counter and argue against, and data gave us that. I think that was second. Third was, I think, the space that we were competing in is global market where the rest of the players are already advanced and ahead. We were not the first movers there. So again, it was important to just base your decisions on something.
Are the leader, and there are newer startups trying to come after you. I'm sure there are globally every day a few word gaming startups start out and give PlaySimple as front slide. How do you stay ahead when you are the incumbent?
Yeah, so I would like to just say that, hey, we're still a startup.
That's the right spirit.
We're still a startup, because, like, I mean, if you look at the market that Kshitij shared with us, it's a very large market. We have sort of like not even covered a single-digit % out of that market. So they're much larger players. Our aspiration has not changed to build a world-class gaming company out of India. We've scored high on some subjects, not all of them. So that is number one, right? Now with that, I would say, and that applies to all the good companies. So we now, of course, we have kind of also uh, uh, become a little bit more like a mid-sized company where yeah, we're not working crazy 7 days a week or 6 days a week like we used to. Uh, but we're operating. We're working from office. We still have like we still try to sort of like um, do our game jams, business reviews. We still try to sort of spend time building new titles. We also have failures where, despite us working on many of these games for some time, they're not working. So, so I think there's nothing different about game building. It's like whenever you're starting about on a new game, you learn, and yeah, the infrastructure helps, but the game building cycle still remains the same.
Very good. Still a startup. I want to open up the floor for any questions from the audience that we've not covered, anything on people's minds. Some over there.
And thanks to Elevation Capital for having PlaySimple and Siddharth here. Siddharth, one question. In gaming, in word gaming, you were not the incumbent. So, can you tell us um, in which areas did you try to be different from your competitors and sort of compete with them?
Yeah, I think it's like, hey, in which areas have we done different from our competitors?
Yeah, is it like game design specifically? Is it live ops? Is it maybe user acquisition? Or just want to understand if there is anything specific which stands out, or is it small compounding in all the areas?
So at different points, it's been different things, and for different. So we have 3 or 4 large games. Depends on like what you call a large game. But for each of these businesses, there are also different life stages and different competitors who are there. So in some places, we have initially we differentiated, and I can speak of one of the things that are probably of the past. So give you some perspective, and I can speak more freely on that one. There was a game which was a, a, a freemium game in the word category, and was built very well, but there was no. I think the hints in that game, if you played our games, were supposed to be bought by $1. So hints were being sold for $1 value. There was no game currency in it. So we innovated by actually bringing a game currency that allowed us to sort of tokenize and sell many things at different price points, not just the hints, and we could sort of incentivize users to do many things. Another example is that game did not have, for example, Facebook invites or request channel or the entire flow, and that allowed us to sort of, we did that, we knew that how to do it. That allowed us to sort of create a significant enough delta between the competitor and us, and that allowed us to scale. Now, that was 8 years ago. Since then, at different points, as the platform has shifted and changed, we have also changed our playbook to make sure that, hey, there is delta that we continue to add to basically differentiate and continue to gain market share.
Thank you.
So I'm just curious to understand, there have been multiple successful games that you've developed, and all of them would have been successful, and they must have a common trait amongst each other, right? So let's say a lot of game development could be about capitalizing on a particular psychology. So is there like a common trend in user psychology that works when you develop a game, or how do you capitalize on that?
Common trait, it's Okay, it's a difficult one because I mean, is that common trait would probably go back to like, hey, what are the things that would make the play game or the player play more and more? How can you take the flow difficulty versus challenge concepts into your game design? How can you sort of like use uh, some of the other game design frameworks around MDA, around self-determination theory, around octalysis? So those are the common traits that hey, games have been thought to from that perspective to make sure that user psychology is kept in mind to bring them back to the game again and again.
Cool. Okay.
Thank you.
Coming over. Thank you.
Thank you.